Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. Stories of service.
Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. My name's Rusty, and today with us we have Dylan Conway. Now, Dylan is an Army veteran and also the founder of Brothers in Books charity. So, Dylan, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Mate, it's a pleasure to be here, and good on you for setting this up, mate. I know it's early days, but I'm excited to see the future and everywhere that it goes. And thank you for doing what you do for the community, eh?
No, thank you, mate. Thank you. I'm excited. It is Monday. It is early in the morning. So we're both just waking up, but let's get this done, mate. So you've done quite a bit for charity through your Brothers in Books organisation, something we'll get to, but your journey through all this kind of started off in the military. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's right. So, mate, I joined up the military. I was a bit of a whippersnapper growing up, like a lot of young men that join the military or the police force. So I moved out of home when I was 16 in my final year of schooling. But prior to that, I'd come across a catalogue for becoming an infantry officer, and I didn't even understand the difference between soldiers and officers at that point in time. So soldiers will give me a lot of cheek over the years about being an officer because I look a certain way, maybe more so like a soldier than an officer. But at the time, as a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, whenever I came across that brochure, I definitely didn't know the difference. So for any soldiers listening out there, don't hold it against me for becoming an infantry officer. But I am proud to say that over the years of running the charity in quite public life, that no soldiers have sort of reached out to be like, I'm not supporting that charity. That officer was an asshole to me. So I must have done something right. But living at a home, mate, in year 12, I was skipping school a lot, like a lot of young men in rural Australia do. But I needed to get the grades required to get accepted into university in the military. So when I wasn't at the gym, skipping school or trying to catch up with ladies, I was studying, and I was fortunate enough to get a good enough score to get accepted into the Australian Defence Force Academy, which is the officer university before going on to the leadership school, which is the Royal Military College of Duntroon. But that's how my military career and motivation started, just going to the toilet one day, and I somehow got this brochure and I read it, and maybe my father put it there in concern to me and sort of seeing where I was going. But I read that, and that's what I said that I was going to do. So I didn't look left or right. That's just sort of what I kept my mind on, and it happened, which is often the case with many things in life, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So were you very academic at school, or when you made that choice to go down the officer path, why did you decide to go the officer rather than the enlisted?
So that's a really great question. So I would say I got very fortunate. My brother and mother, my whole family is quite intellectually minded, very smart. So I got very fortunate with my natural abilities with mathematics, numbers, and physics mainly going through school. But I definitely, like every young person, didn't apply myself, right? I'm sure your report card looks like mine.
Yeah,
And it's the same with everybody in the military. But that decision for soldier versus officer, I think it was just the pay packet, and they sell you that you're doing the same thing as the soldiers, when in reality, obviously, I spent a lot longer behind a desk, and then in my later years as a captain, all of the time behind a desk. So, that was the motivation there. But for a lot of young soldiers, I'd recommend anyway that they review their ability to go into the officer stream, even despite after joining up, because it does offer you a wider range of perspective and more sort of efficacy and control over your existence within the military. Have always said that I have so much respect for soldiers, especially senior warrant officers in the military, for their ability to, have the discipline and professionalism to take orders from some ragtag bloody 20-year-old like myself, but also their discipline to last a career of 20 years where they are accepting of decisions, whether they be right or wrong, and then doing their best to make that plan come to life. So, massive respect for the soldiers out there. But definitely I always encourage people further learning, and, why not aim for a promotion the same way that if you're a young soldier and you're interested in special forces, absolutely go for it. 3 weeks of, I know there's 9 months of hard work and training and dedication, but 3 weeks of pain and you get a $30,000 pay rise. If that was a corporate environment, absolutely that is the decision you make. So good on the young soldiers that are choosing to go to special forces these days, because I think it's an obvious choice if you're committed to the job.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we only got one life. You've got to go after these things that you want. People in
Oh,
these first responder roles know this better than most.
well, absolutely. The perspective I think that you gained from, you mentioned first responders, the police officers, especially coming, and lads that have been deployed overseas in hairy situations, but even anybody that's faced a medical hardship, and we all sort of realize it later on in life. But if you look at incredible leaders in the business space throughout history, one thing that a lot of them have in common, and you'll find in their daily habit and routine, is that sort of memento mori sort of attitude and understanding that death comes to us all. And now, if you were able to, and not in a nihilistic way or a pessimistic way, but if you're able to remind yourself of that often, then I do believe that your life will be filled with more epiphanies and more sliding doors and more courage. Because once you realize that we're all going to die at some point. There's this famous saying, I can't remember the man who made the quote, but I believe, it might have been Winston Churchill. When you're 20 years old, you think everybody cares about what you do. When you're 40 years old, you don't care what people think about what you do. And when you're 60 years old, you realize no one ever cared at all. And I think that's a great quote, because if you want to go out and do something, and you're worried about the stigma involved in it, or having to learn a new skill, or putting yourself out there, no one gives a fuck. And when people go to bed at night, they don't think about you. They think about themselves, the same way that I do, the same way that you do. For example, I've got a speech this week at a local police station that do really great work. From this point onwards to that point, all I'm thinking about is making sure that I deliver a good presentation. When I'm there on the day and I'm concerned whether or not, the presentation is good or not, I need to remember that when these men and women go home at night, they're not thinking about me, they're thinking about themselves, the same way that we all do. And I think that's a really great way to just sort of swallow your pride and your weird anxiety and just crack on.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's rewind back a little bit. Your time in ADFA, how did you feel the first day you went in?
Yeah, I was pretty young and naive, like everybody that joins the military or the cops, right? Everybody wants to pretend that they're prepared, etc. But there's nothing really that you can do to prepare for a new circumstance, unless you were to go do like a military boot camp. But even then, it's going to vary. I was 17 at the time. I had a really good female captain as my divisional officer. And when I say really good, I mean really good in terms of pushing boundaries and success for the young men and women in that platoon. I actually at the time felt as if she was a massive bully, because you couldn't do anything right. And yeah, it was definitely eye-opening, getting yelled at all the time, but not being able to do anything right. But in hindsight, I personally couldn't have treated 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds like that. It was pretty fucked up. But in hindsight, I remember those times because they were tough, and they're the times that I take forward with me and where the most learning sort of occurred. So, yeah, definitely bright-eyed and unprepared, like everybody, I think, going in. But it's an interesting sort of leadership case study because, yeah, treating 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds like they're absolute pieces of shit, and having no empathy towards a child, it's fucking, I don't know how to do it, but she did it very well. And, I wish her all the best wherever she is. I believe she's a nuclear physicist now.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of talented people, right? And this is another one. There's so many great soldiers out there, right? I've had so many soldiers that are just mind-blowingly smart, incredible, innovative, and the flow-on effect for that soldier being with a section or a half section, or a fire team, of 4 or 8 people, it just brings the whole section up with them because they've got someone who's reading, someone who's listening to podcasts, someone that's running their own business on the side, a leader that they look to, and it raises all ships. High tides raise all ships. So coming back to my advice before about, think about doing special forces selection, think about becoming an officer. When you surround yourself with people that are, soon to be nuclear physicists, then, your rate of learning is sped up. And when your rate of learning is sped up, then you can go and accomplish more within that short time period of life that we have. But yeah, sorry for the long-winded way to answer the question. Joining the military, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, mate, like everybody, I think it was definitely eye-opening.
Can you tell me what life was like at ADFA?
Yeah, so I can tell you pretty much down to the weekly routine, mate. Tuesday nights we had footy training for rugby league, which means that we were getting on the piss that night. Wednesday mornings was like 4 hours of PT, so we were feeling the hurt that night. Thursday afternoons was footy training, which means we were getting on the piss that night. And then Friday mornings was PT, which means we were feeling the hurt. And then Saturday, we'd go to New South Wales and play rugby league, and which means we were getting on the piss that night. And it's just like any sort of form of basic training. Whilst we were studying during those days that I mentioned, what I remember is the camaraderie from playing sport and the morale from that, and all the great nights that we had, forming bonds that still last to this day. But as opposed to the actual Defence Force Academy, I'm sure a number of people wouldn't have had the experience that I've just shared, especially if they were studying something like engineering. I'm sure their days consisted of 12 hours of study and then sleep, 12 hours of study and then sleep. But it's really interesting because you could almost break up how people were spending their time at the Australian Defence Force Academy to what specific roles they would go into the future. And I've always said there's a great case study there that hasn't been lent on because it's perhaps a bit contrary to the narrative. But from my understanding and perspective, from knowing a lot of blokes, and I say blokes in this case, that would have been, from the staff's point of view, destined for failure. It seems that those big sporting people and sociable people and drinkers, which sort of went hand in hand, are all in the special forces now. So it's really interesting how you spend your time. If you build that, whilst you could say drinking, whatever, it's a waste of time, those social connections, that emotional intelligence, the ability to have conversations with other people seems to be some sort of trait that makes you, more flexible and adaptable to learning new skills and being curious to other people. So that was my time at ADFA, mate, and I think there's something in that. I don't believe that any scientist or psychologist is going to review how drinking can help you get into special forces. But if you look at the people that get in back in those days, they're all the ones that everybody said, he's no good.
Yeah. I know I know exactly what you mean, and I think it's just down to the personality. They're very flexible.
Yeah, definitely. And being able to put things on top, you're sort of taking risk-taking behavior, right? If you've got tattoos, and I'm putting my arms up in the air to say that, if you moved out of home early, if you started, doing silly things younger, if you can rein that in, but also still have that, well, I can still be successful whilst having a bit of fun. It allows you to fit more things into your day, potentially. But yeah, I know a lot of my infantry officer peers, that, they're a cut above the rest potentially from other corps in terms of their capability. But they're also the last ones at the mess at Friday afternoon drinks, if you know what I mean. And perhaps it just comes with managing stress as well. Not saying that the drinking and the socialization is a stress reduction. It's just that they have little amount of stress, so they're able to enjoy themselves more, which leads to good non-emotive decision making potentially.
And I suppose you've got to have a certain mindset if you know you're going to sign up for the infantry type roles as well.
Yeah, a naive one, mate.
So how long was ADFA for you?
Yeah, so we go to ADFA for 3 years, and then we do a number of different training blocks through that time. So whilst the Air Force and the Navy go on holidays, I shit you not, the Army people get on buses and get yelled at for 3 weeks straight. So it's similar to Kapuka. Every time we do a training period, where you start back at zero. I recall as a 17-year-old being yelled at one morning at Ravelli, saying that you're not even a recruit, you are less than a recruit. So to put it into perspective, you hit Kapuka 6 times within 3 years. So it's funny, you've got that same shocker capture happening again. And I actually just recently, one of the best course managers I had as a young man was a man that served in Afghanistan at Derapet in the cavalry as a corporal back then, but now he was a warrant officer, and he's recently gotten out of the military and he started his own mowing business, which I was very happy to support. So he came around for a coffee and he reminded me of a story on one of these battle blocks where he said, do you remember that time? It was about 5 a.m. and you guys had just pulled up at the training area, and I stepped onto the bus yelling and said, get into the push-up position now. And I won't yell into the microphone this morning. And he said how funny it was when 60 people in a bus tried to figure out how to go into a push push-up position on top of one another within the bus. And I said, mate, I can't remember that happening because I had 4 weeks of you yelling at me straight, but I'm sure that it did, and I appreciate you. He said, no worries.
So what happens after? So you do your ADFA, you do that for 3 years. What happens after that?
Yeah, so after that, where we get those glimpses of Army training ongoing for 3 years, it leads to the final battle block, it's called. So it's 4 weeks in the field where you're assessed as a section commander, albeit a very incompetent one, but just ticking the boxes more or less to make sure that you understand. And then from there, if you're successful, you'll march across to the Royal Military College of Duntroon. If you are unsuccessful, you will still march across to the Royal Military College of Duntroon. However, your training period won't be 12 months like the rest of the people that pass. It will be 18 months. So once we go to the Royal Military College of Duntroon, the week generally looks like a 6-day working week whilst you're in barracks, which consists of about 10 to 12 hours of lectures per day with about 2 to 3 hours of homework per night to make sure that you're up to date. And it's broken into 4 different sort of quarters, and each quarter comprises of a 4 to 5 week field activity where you are assessed the entire time. And we do offensive operations, defensive operations, complex operations, which just consists of incorporating other elements such as cavalry, artillery, armor, etc., and making them work together. And then stability operations, which of course is things like non-combat evacuation operations, urban, etc. But yeah, it's a wild time. So you're tired the entire time. You only get Sunday off. You're living in these dilapidated accommodation buildings, which are listed as heritage sites from, the early 1900s or whatever. So it's freezing cold the entire time in Canberra. My room, I remember, was about maybe 5 foot wide, maybe 7 foot deep. And with all your uniforms that you get issued, the room itself didn't actually have enough room to hang those uniforms. So everybody that was in my building with those rooms would have a broomstick hanging in the corner of their room so they could actually put up their equipment, and then you would have inspection after inspection, and if someone came into your room and there was something in the incorrect location, you'd be out on the drill square the next morning at 5 a.m. with your pack on your back, doing drill for an extra hour before you go to your 10 hours of classes and your 2 hours of PT. So it's an interesting time, and soldiers give officers stick all the time for what they did and did not do at RMC. But I've been to the School of Infantry as an instructor for young soldiers, and I think the skill sets aren't too different. It's just the amount of time that and resources that is put into officer training. I think if the Kapuka was extended, then it would look just like RMC, no doubt. So that's RMC, and of course there's the very famous exercise at RMC, which every officer talks about, which is Shaggy Ridge, which is just the sleep and food deprivation exercise. And I myself, I'm a bit of a bigger bloke, but I think I lost 12 kilograms in 6 days because you also pack march around 160 kilometers as well. And interestingly, it's the only exercise where I saw the staff really didn't care about when they were doing their reporting, and it might be different these days, but what you look like in terms of height or capability or gender. So all these shorter guys and shorter women, they're physically not able to carry, the 80 kilograms you had in your pack at some points where you're carrying a 50 cal or something. But it was just the instructors were like, you were the weakest, like straight up. The reporting and the feedback was like, you were shit, you were the weakest, like, and they'd be like, well, sorry, Captain, like I'm fucking 5'2". What can I do? And they're like, well, it doesn't matter because your soldiers aren't going to fucking care how tall you are, how big you are. You're just going to have to do the job. So this is the assessment that we're giving you. I remember one guy, it was so funny, mate. He asked to see a medic because he had broken his foot. He said, I think my foot is broken. And he wasn't allowed to see the medic. He then got reported down in his leadership for his report on that exercise. And then he finished on a broken foot for like 100 Ks. And when he got back to base, he got an x-ray. Sure enough, his foot's like smashed. And he took the report to his assessing officer and said, hey, can I get my leadership assessment changed to say that I actually had a fucking broken foot. And they went, nah, we're not going to change that, mate.
Yeah, far out. It's rough, but I suppose when you're in actual operations, it fucking doesn't matter.
That's correct. That's correct. And it's just getting that all across the line. And I've got absolutely zero regrets or negative comments about the staff or the institution or the training package, because whether it was being fortunate enough to have an exceptional platoon sergeant that had seen combat operations when I first was a platoon commander, so when I graduated, or the training, I definitely felt prepared going into leading about 36 men at the time as a 20-year-old.
Can you tell me, I assume there's some sort of march out after RNC?
Yeah. So after the march out, you go straight to your battalion. And this is interesting, actually. My first day in the battalion, it was me and about 5 other lieutenants at the time. So we got our promotion, and you're the bottom of the barrel. You got no idea what the hell you're doing. And my first day in the battalion, I ran into my company 2IC, who's a captain. He said, you must be Dylan. I said, hey, sir, how are you? He goes, yeah. I'm all right, mate. But anyway, here's 3 Papua New Guinea majors and sergeants. I need you to show them their battalion because I've got to run. So, and I just went, okay. And keep in mind, I've never been to this organization. So me and like 6 senior NCOs and OCs from Papua New Guinea who could barely speak a lick of English went around, and I tried to show them what the hell I knew, which was nothing until such time. That's how I met my platoon. That was my introduction. I walked up to my platoon and I turned to the majors and I said, this is my platoon. Let's keep the tour going. The next day, after being in the battalion for 1 day, I was at the Townsville courthouse with one of my soldiers who'd committed a crime. And then so I was a pseudo lawyer on my second day within the battalion. Within 2 weeks of being in the battalion, I then did my first ever live fire exercise with AMO and four-wheeler motorbikes in the Townsville heat. It was a 16-hour live fire exercise with helicopters, as I mentioned, and at night. And I had about probably 9 soldiers go down with heat, no duff sort of casualty evacuations. And meanwhile, I just spent 4 years in Canberra. So as you could tell, I was also feeling the heat. And I've got a couple of corporals that remember, but the last live fire sort of activity for that operation was a 3-hour ambush, and during the entire 3 hours that we're supposed to be quiet and about to light up the enemy, I was throwing up on myself in my pit with dehydration and fatigue, and it was so bad that I could hardly put my fingers straight because my fingers were cramping up that much. But I'm proud to say, mate, probably not for the greater good of the platoon, but for my own individual ego and not being known as that guy that sputtered in, I got to the end, albeit I was sick for about a week afterwards. So lots of fun. So that was my first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's probably important, though, especially in your early days, to be able to prove yourself to the guys.
Yeah, even if the guys didn't prove themselves to me.
I think there's always that expectation of an officer, though.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So, I take the piss out of soldiers all the time because they take the piss out of me. But I've always said to them, I was like, guys, keep in mind, you're going to get some young geezer coming in through here after me. You get to see everything they do. They sit in the middle of the platoon. I said, when you and fucking Johnny are out on the corner of the platoon harbour and Johnny does something fucking stupid, which I know he's doing, it's only between you two. I said, but if I fuck up in the middle, about 20 blokes just saw that, you dogs. So just keep that in mind. We're all humans and we're all on the same team, unless you get a proper dickhead of a leader, doesn't matter what rank, then, have at it. But I think that's pretty rare after the training.
Let's talk a little bit. How did you feel walking into this platoon for the first time, or to your unit for the first time? Because obviously your introduction was, looking after those officers from PNG, and that's how you met your platoon. But how personally did you feel? Did you feel prepared walking into that?
I think absolutely not, mate. And, we mentioned it earlier about doing new things. There's so many times in my day, mate, like even these days where, I haven't been to a place, I don't know what I'm doing there, I've never done something before, and you just take a couple of deep breaths and try to play the game, right? And it comes back to what we spoke about before. Nobody's thinking about you more than yourself. So just remembering that and just getting on with it and learning, But if you have a curious mind and you've got some empathy, then I think you can truly learn anything. That people aren't too different between people. People think there's other people out there that are smarter than them and better than them. It's just simply not the case. Especially when you grow up in Australia, you've got access to God at your fingertips with a mobile phone. You can find the information, but you've also got access to these people around you who are on the same team. Where if you make yourself approachable, communicate effectively, and just be a nice bloke, then they're going to give you the information that you require to succeed, and then you'll also try and give that back once you acquire information that can assist them. So yeah, absolutely unprepared, mate, but with those things in mind, I think that's just what you got to do sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. How long did you spend in that unit?
Yeah, so I spent 1 to 3 years at one area, and then I did 2 years of my captaincy time at the Warrant Officer and Non-Commissioned Academy, where we just were training Subject 1 for corporal course, so training future corporals. And then I did 3 to 4 years, I believe, at 6 area here in Brisbane, and that was my career, mate. And as you know, in military and policing careers, sometimes personal injury occurs. In my case, mate, it was just the genetic lottery of waking up one morning and finding out I had a certain disease on my lower back. But my career, unfortunately, was cut short because of a total of 9 operations on my back now, and spending 14 months to 2 years in bed, being unable to walk. And so that cut my career short. But I still believe, I give it a good crack, and hopefully people were better off after I come into contact with them. I know I certainly was, but that's around the whole of my career. Now, I never deployed on operations, probably fortunately, after hearing some of the stories about what people went through. But yeah, so that was my career in a nutshell.
Yeah, can you talk to me about what some of your highlights were, your best memories of being in the Army?
Yeah, so I think, look, that's a really good question, and it's broad, but what I'll say is a broad answer in return. And the best things about joining the military is the best thing about being in a sporting team when you're young, and that's the camaraderie that you have with the people around you, your peers. Because if you think about it, you're spending more time with these people than you spend with your family almost growing up. I know, me and my brother are very close. But when I was going through basic training for 4 years, is all the training all up, I'm brushing my teeth and shaving next to, who I now call my best friends. That's a lot of time period together. So you're able to build those really good bonds with everybody. And then because you've all had that shared hardship, you have that common ground immediately with people. So I could go into any army base now and, get along with 90% of the people there. So I think that camaraderie is the biggest one. In terms of actual experiences, I think it'd be hard to put my finger on it, but we've been through a few. I think, and what I used to tell my soldiers is that nobody talks about the times that they had it easy. So all of my favorite times within the military would be when I was having probably the shittest time possible. And if you were to talk to any other soldier or officer, that's probably what they'd say. So I remember that now being a civilian, because if I can put myself into those hardship periods, then they're the memories that I'm going to make. So just recently I ran 100 kilometers. Earlier in the year, I did a Guinness World Record attempt where I attempted to stay awake for 6 days. I got 4.5 days in. But I remember those things because they're fucking hard. So I think soldiers and officers that tell you the same stories, it'd always be when it's raining, when they're tired, when their legs don't work or they broke their foot and kept going. They're what you remember. And I know a lot of soldiers would talk about horrible leaders that they've had as well, because that mental sort of manipulation and, I would say psychopathy of some crazy leaders definitely stays with people for a long time, like a bad relationship almost. So I know I definitely am guilty of whinging about previous bosses as well. But those times taught me how not to be. So weirdly, they stick with your memory.
Nice. How long did you spend all up within the Army?
Yeah, so 12 years. So I did 12 years within the Australian Defence Force from when I was 17 to now I'm about to turn 30, and I've only just left the military 2 months ago. It got to the point where I was working full-time in the Army and running the charity full-time as well. And if you do the math on that, no time exists in between. So the charity, I felt that I was making more of a difference with the charity to more people and impact than what I could if I was to remain in the military and expose myself to further surgeries through my service and wait until I got to a senior enough officer position to reach the same amount of people. And unfortunately, I see what happens as you move through the ranks. It's sometimes the individual, but often it's the job. You are far too hamstrung by the organisation to make the impact that you think that you will be able to make later on. So I think make the most of every position, and perhaps it comes down to the individual. But I saw my opportunity after my 9th surgery to be like, hey, fool me once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I don't want to have a 10th surgery because there's a risk I'll end up in a wheelchair if I do. So I said, that's me done. Like, I've given it a red hot crack. Yeah. I don't think I can keep having bloody back surgeries.
12 years is a long time.
Oh, yeah. And, I've read enough biographies as well to know that the military is a young man's game. And, you can get that great experience and move on while you still got a positive perception of the organisation and your time. And I think that's very important for like the transition space as well. But, I mentioned starting the charity within the organisation. I think if I could give any advice to any young people thinking about transition, is that the transition needs to happen mentally a couple, maybe a year out, but always be curious in your career, because there are so many times where, you're not injured, you're not having a rough time, and you've got a bit of spare time on your hands. How are you going to utilise that to make sure that you're set up for success on the outside? I'd also say to get a LinkedIn account if you're listening to this and you're a soldier. Even if you don't use it, you get to see what's on the outside, and you're not just listening to your mates' furfies when they tell you there's heaps of jobs. You'll be right. Yeah, everybody wants to employ a veteran. And then you bloody leave and you look around yourself and you don't have a resume written. So that'd be my advice there.
Yeah. What inspired you to start Brothers and Books?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I had a lot of surgeries on my back, mate. There's a lot of charities out there, right? I haven't fucking had a phone call from any of them, you know what I mean, as an individual veteran. And so I was laying in bed. I almost bled to death twice, couldn't walk, couldn't see my friends, couldn't shower, shit, or bloody drive a car. And I was having my bandages changed every second day, where I'd have to do 2 green whistles as they pulled out foam from within my body in a large cavity in my back. And mate, I got my whole chest tattooed. It's probably a 12-hour tattoo. To change the bandage in my back every second day took about 10 seconds. But I would rather have my entire chest tattooed again than to go through that 10 seconds of pain getting my bandage done. So during this time, I sort of realized, no one's coming to save you, unfortunately. And whilst that is the common sort of perception for people waiting around for the government or some organisation to give you the support that you need, if we look back in our own lives and we think about the different things that we've overcame, very rarely do we attribute it to somebody else's work in us getting back to, our position. You've gone to the gym yourself. You've lost the weight yourself. You've broken up with that bad relationship yourself. You've done the work in your corporate career to get that promotion. And it was when I was at my absolute worst that I realized, well, unfortunately, again, it comes back to, I guess, the theme of this podcast, mate. No one cares. No one cares more than you. So you've got the decision to make. Well, what am I going to do to fix this situation? And when I was completely down and out, mate, I was reliant on the doctors for a period of time that I would argue it was longer than it should have been to go, how what am I? We've just had 5 surgeries, guys, 2 of them emergency surgeries while I'm pissing blood. What do we do? And they had no idea, but they didn't say, I have no idea, do they? When you're in a leadership position, they went, That's right. I think it's this, I think it's that. And they were wrong every time. And it's not against the individual doctor. It's a unique case, whatever. But as an individual, I take ownership for that to say, well, I shouldn't have been reliant on, regardless of what prenominal they have at the start of their name, I should have been doing my own research to see what I could do to fix the situation. And as you know, many university students and maybe doctors are, a cream of the crop, and none of them do this. But I spoke about my time at university, and I spent it drinking and playing sports. There's this cognitive, what's the word? Oh, it'll come to me, but we just assume, right? People in different leadership positions or professions, they must know better. And that may be the case. And we still use the services. But go out, find the information for yourself, utilize your own critical thinking, and then you've got two resources at your hands. You've got your own knowledge from the books that you've read, the podcasts that you've listened to, the website searches that you've read, and then you've got the professional's opinion as well, and then you're able to work with them to find the best solution. So for me, mate, that's what got me into reading books. I had just had my fourth surgery, an emergency surgery on Christmas Eve, and I'd spent the last 4 months in bed being unable to walk or do anything, and I was incredibly depressed. A couple of days after that event, I received a book at my door from an old mentor of mine, another army officer, and it was Say Yes to Life by Viktor Frankl. And I read that book, and all of a sudden, here's me with a chunk of flesh out of my back the size of a football, connected to a wall with a machine I had that was sucking blood out of my back to make sure it didn't get infected, so I could see the blood coming out of my back 24/7. This thing would beep at you all the time, so I wasn't sleeping well. I put on about 10 kilograms because I couldn't go to the gym or go outside or walk. But despite all of that, I read this book, and learning about what Viktor Frankl had gone through in the Holocaust and World War II gave me the perspective to go, well, if this guy can do this, maybe I should have some bloody gratitude about the warm bed that I'm lying in whilst, potentially dying. The fact that I can still call my parents that they're alive, the fact that I have access to food, the fact that I'm not being beaten every day. And that one book, after that, I said, holy shit, it changed my perspective. So I decided to just read more and more books. And after that fourth surgery and reading that book and then reading hundreds of other books, every time a surgeon told me, sorry, mate, you're going to need another surgery, I went, oh, well, I don't give a shit.
Yep. Yeah, that mindset and the information that you get from these books. Have you read The Resilience Shield?
Yeah, so I know The Resilience Shield by Dr. Dan Pronk, and that book references many other books as well, right?
It does, yes.
So and it's an incredible book for a first time reader's one-stop shop for resilience and all the different things that you can utilize to better yourself and gain that resilience. But what I would say is if that book has made an impact on you, check out the other books within it that it references and then read those books. And I'll have it a guess that those other books reference other books as well. And so then you start understanding, and then you're able to get all of the information that great people like Dan and the team have gotten themselves, and then you have that knowledge as well. And that just makes you unstoppable, and write your own bloody book on it. Now, obviously, right, those guys as well have a myriad of experiences within the SASR. However, you can access the information through reading those stories and then adopt them into your own life as well. And there's that great quote by George R.R. Martin that says, a reader lives 1,000 lives. And how true is that? We have a finite period of time, but someone out there has written a biography about all of their learning, and let's say it's Warren Buffett's 90 years, and he's put it into a book. You're able to read that book in 8 hours and understand and learn all of the things it's taken him a lifetime to read. So great quote by George R.R. Martin. Despite perhaps his physical appearance, he's definitely wise.
Is there any other books that you recommend people read?
Yeah, heaps. But I always say that, different books mean different things to different people at different times of their lives, to throw a spanner in the works to that question. But I would say that if you were going through a rough time, then read full stop, because you will stop your brain thinking for just a bit of time. You can't do two things at once when you're reading a book, and maybe the first couple of lines you'll get distracted, you'll check your phone, you'll be thinking about something. But reading is like meditation. The difference is that meditation is actually very difficult to get into, whereas reading a book, it's something that we did as children, and as we do it as adults, we get into that theta flow, that mindset, and we're actually just thinking about the information that's presented to us on a page. It's funny when we have an interview with a psychologist, if we're going through a difficult time, a psychologist isn't trained to give advice, and rightly so. What their job is to do is to build enough rapport with their client so that the client identifies the problems in their own life through sharing, so that they're able to then see the forest for the trees and change the behavior that's causing the negative side effects with their mental health. The beautiful thing about books is you are able to have that comfortability with yourself and the book immediately. It doesn't take 6 sessions. You've got it yourself. So you'll read something in the book, and let's say it's Resilience Shield, and you'll assess your own life with that mindfulness and go, I should be implementing this. Or that's me. I constantly, worry about something that's unimportant. So I do believe that bibliotherapy, used in conjunction with psychology, perhaps, but it is a very cost-effective and timely way to support yourself. So for myself, mate, obviously I'm biased and I'm projecting reading all over the universe because it's something that really helped me in times of need. But it is my belief that organisations like the police, like first responder, different units, and the Defence Force, and anybody facing, physical hardship often should incorporate reading into a holistic rehabilitation plan. You've got different ways to treat different mental health things and also physical injuries. You've got your psychotherapists for psychology. You've got your psychiatrists for the medicinal route to treat these things. And then the last one is you've got yourself and all the things that you're doing. And I do believe that if you can't walk, or if you're going through a physical hardship, then stop trying to focus on your body and ruminating on that. Start thinking about your mind and all of the progression that you can make during that period of your life, mate. And I mentioned exercise Shaggy Ridge earlier as a resilience building exercise for Army officers. It is my belief that I have gained more resilience through reading books than through 12 years in the Army as an infantry officer, and I stand by that. So if you want to be able to build the resilience through an experience like 10 years in the military, read a couple hundred books, and you'll read books about other officers. You'll learn what they went through. You'll understand that they can get through it, and you'll adopt that same mindset. And there's a very famous story about the 4-minute mile. For years, people all over the world have been trying to run 4-minute mile, right? Couldn't be done. And one day in around the 50s or 60s, I can't remember his name, but he ran the 4-minute mile. And all around the world, they heard about this, superstar running a 4-minute mile. And guess what happened next? People all over the world started running the 4-minute mile. The simple process of becoming aware that something is possible allowed other people to also be able to achieve it. The same is true for the kickflip on a skateboard. The same is true for the first backflip on a motorbike. So what I'm saying is, if you read hundreds of books about different people's experiences, how they handled it, what they went through, and how they come out the other side, it is likely that the simple awareness that that is possible will allow you to also go on to do great things. And that is why I believe that if you want to build your resilience, then it is not in the gym, unfortunately. While frames of reference to doing hard things physically is important, but it is in the library, and I stand by that.
Yeah, physical fitness is obviously it's a necessary part of life, but everything is initiated in the brain.
That's correct. That is correct. And it'd be great. I see, unfortunately, mental health awareness campaigns are incredibly important. And for the last decade, they've done an exceptional job at bringing down the stigma related with talking about your feelings. I have no doubt in that. And I'm not saying there's a causal relationship. It's probably got to do with the complex society we find ourselves in today with technology and first world sort of comforts that lead to sort of weaker minds, potentially, not weaker, but, difficult times. But the suicide rate continues to go up. And it is my belief that I think less mental health awareness, more mental health knowledge. It's so crazy, Matt. I speak to corporates all the time and I go, who here's gotten their annual mental health awareness training? They all put their hand up. I go, that's brilliant. I go, what are the top 3 leading causes of stress in Australia? And it goes fucking silent.
Crickets. Yep.
Isn't it bizarre that in a room full of ex-military officers that are all trained to do a correct threat assessment, look at its strengths and weaknesses and then target the weaknesses so that we can, utilize our strengths to beat it. No one's done an assessment on the leading causes of stress that lead to mental health problems in our society. Does that, and the cognitive dissonance is the word that I was thinking of before. For 10 years, I have been receiving mental health annual awareness training, and at no stage was I taught that the leading cause of stress in Australia is financial stress, which leads to mental health problems. Number two is relationships. So at no stage was I taught that. And then number three is physical injury, right? So that's the three leading causes of stress. And then with depression, there are 7 leading causes of depression, and you can find them in a great book called Lost Connections. And it's disconnect from the outside world, so getting out into environment, disconnect from physical, going to the gym and running, purpose, meaningful work, etc. But you can use these like a checklist. And you mentioned before that it all starts in the brain. I believe that if we were to start thinking about things more practically, as opposed to awareness and maybe the word would be, quantifying it as opposed to the theoretical things, that we'd be able to give people a tick list and go, hey, I'm feeling depressed. You go, shit, mate. I'm sorry to hear. Just quickly, how are you going on the weekends, mate? Are you getting outside in nature enough? And they go, yeah, I'm getting outside enough, man, Cameron. Sweet. Mate, are you spending a lot of time with your family? Yeah, spending plenty of time with my family. Mate, how's work going? Go through the checklist of the 7 things. Oh, new boss. I'm not really interested in this thing that I'm doing. Sweet. You keep going through the checklist. That's the only one that's not ticked off. Mate, have you thought about starting a side hustle or going back to university and studying? Have you thought about having a chat to your boss to let him know you're feeling this way because of that? And we're able to identify the different things that's leading to this and then implement a strategy to work on it. And again, who has to work on it at the end of the day? It's yourself. But at least this goes from saying, I'm depressed, I don't know why, and not being able to work on a solution because you're unable to identify the problem, to identifying the problem and then working on a solution. And that's why I think reading's so great, because there's solutions out there everywhere. And also you will reduce your stress levels as well whilst you're doing it.
Absolutely. Can we talk about your charity for people that are out there that are listening to this and don't know what Brothers in Books does?
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned it before. What I try and do, what the charity's mission is to support Australians' mental health through bibliotherapy. So we've got a number of programs. We've got a number of free resources online, the best reading lists and books on different topics like depression, anxiety, PTSD, but even for leadership and different skills as well, and entrepreneurialism. So we've got our free resources, and one of our major programs as well is our free community library. So if you're in an organisation that's supporting your community, and it could be the police, the Defence Force, veterans, and it could even be another charity, you can reach out to us and we'll provide a free community library similar to the street libraries that you see, but within your organisation, so your organisation can begin utilising bibliotherapy. And when someone gets injured at work and they go and they're spending time by themselves at home whilst they're waiting to recover, they can grab 3 of the best books ever written by the best psychologists in the world while they're waiting. Perhaps it's burnout, while they're waiting to see their psychologist. They can start their learning early. And the charity, we also do a number of other things. If people get injured and they reach out to the charity or they're going through a hard time, we'll send them free books on the topics that we think will benefit them. And outside of that, we also do a number of speaking events as well to corporates to get them reading more books. And the final thing that I do, mate, is just try and convince people that reading is cool and changing the stigma around, hey, not only is this going to change your life, but it will radically transform your life to something better and help you flourish. And it's crazy. One of the single most determining factors for long-term wealth in children is their habit of reading. And isn't that just crazy? Absolutely crazy. The single most important thing that you can do if you want to be wealthy is read.
Yeah, I've got 3 kids, right? And I always tell them I will buy them as many books as they want. I would never ever say no to buying a book. You read that book, you tell me what it's about, you summarize it for me, and then I'll buy you your next book. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. No, well, good on you, mate. It sounds like you're a great father. I don't have children myself, but I'm already coming up with strategies to keep them reading, whether it's $5 per book that they read after the summary, of course, because you got to keep them honest.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's such an important thing. And it's also, I believe, an important thing for parents to be reading themselves and setting the example. And it sounds like you definitely are, mate, with everything that you're doing, dropping them off this morning, coming back here to produce a podcast so that people can open their minds to different learnings as well. So good on you, mate. And I have no doubt that all 3 of your children are going to benefit from your example.
Absolutely. And you know what I'm doing after this, right?
No, I don't.
I'm going to put some kilometers for the Brothers and Books 100K May challenge.
My man. So thank you so much for that. So in the charity space, the only reason I started a charity or have the ability to start a charity is, what a surprise, because I read a book. And for me personally, morally, it's been difficult as an individual to run a charity because I want to focus on getting all the books out and the philanthropy and all that stuff. But unfortunately, we need to fundraise at some point as well. So I think we've got a good even mix. But right now, and good on the coppers, and keep sending me community library requests. I've got to do over $300,000 worth of community libraries that are requested currently. So whenever you see, and this stays between us, and also the listeners on your podcast, whenever you see me doing something crazy like running 100 kilometers straight or staying awake for 4.5 days, that's pretty much when you can have it a guess that my bank account or my charity's bank account is getting close to zero and we need to make more community libraries. So it's a funny ethical space that I'm in, but mate, I'm pretty proud. In 4 years, we've done over $165,000 of community libraries. We've given over $150,000 away to other charities, and we've never taken a cent. So and whilst I won't hang my hat on that, because charities, they've got to do what they've got to do. But for myself as an individual, that's been the easiest way to keep the things separate. And perhaps it's probably not the best company strategy for the charity, but it's definitely the thing that works best for me.
That's a massive impact.
4 years, 4 years. So I would say to anybody listening and to yourself, but I know you already know, you do anything for 4 years often and see where you end up. I know like someone like Joe Rogan, he goes, I didn't get paid until after 5 years of podcasting. And then there's that great stat, most podcasts don't make the 20th episode, all that. That is true for any skill, any habit. Do it for 4 years if you're passionate about it. Don't give up, keep going. Things don't happen overnight. While it's easy for like CEOs like myself to stand up in front of kids and be like, and this is how I did it, and I'm so successful and all this crap. That's not how it happened. It was early mornings like this. It was late nights like you probably had last night, and it was work and dedication. But over time, that continues to go up. So yeah, just setting your expectations low for success early, because it just simply doesn't exist. And you look at businesses like, let's say LSKD, that are selling, millions of dollars of sporting attire. And just this is just plucked out because I recently went to one of their events, and you go, well, I could start a clothing company and I could make all that money as well. Often what they don't tell you is that they're pumping tens of millions of dollars into Facebook Meta marketing ads. So, don't believe everything you see. Don't think I can just do this. Do the study, do your own research, teach yourself the skills, and then develop those skills. And then one day I have no doubt that you will be successful in whatever you do.
Perfect. If there's some people out there listening that are interested in your cause and interested in donating, how can they get in touch with you? Or how can they donate?
So great question. And thanks for allowing me to spruik it. I'll spruik it. www.brothersandbooks.com. And like I said, there's heaps of free resources up there at the moment. You can volunteer with the charity. If you love buying books on your weekends, we will pay you to go out to secondhand bookstores and buy hundreds of books. And then we'll allow you to facilitate setting up a new community library. So you can volunteer. You can check out the website. I wouldn't say donate. because again, I'm like, don't say, as a charity, don't donate. But what I will say is if you buy a shirt or something like that, you can rock the merch. All that money goes into buying the books in the community libraries anyway. So it's like a donation, but you get a T-shirt as well. So
awesome. So what's next for you, Dylan? You've done so much already.
So that's a really great question. At the moment, I've just developed our volunteering course online. So our volunteers will be able to do that course without too much interaction from myself to get them out and buying books or whatever department they'd like to volunteer. And moving forward, mate, I think over the next month and a half, I might slow down operations for myself just a little bit, pick up some more books, and then I have no doubt something crazy will come out of the woodworks, mate, and you'll see it. But I reckon that'll happen around July if you keep an eye for it. But yeah, so that's me, mate. I'm in a good space, lots of learning. We're about to release a bibliotherapy course as well, so that leaders all around Australia can understand the phenomenal benefits of encouraging their team to read. And the beautiful thing about giving a book as a leader is that, your employees will hold on to something like that for the rest of their life, especially if you write a heartwarming note inside of it as well. So a $20 gift will often last a lifetime.
Perfect, mate. I really want to thank you for coming on. Like the impact that you've done, especially for a lot of veterans and first responders through your charity is really such an amazing thing. I don't think anything is out there like this. So I just want to say thank you for doing that.
And mate, likewise, like I said at the start, I think what you're doing is a great thing, and maintain, mate. I can't wait to see it continue to be successful and grow, and see you in a few years, or maybe even a few months, with a full podcast studio behind you and everything going on, and maybe a team as well.
I'd love to, mate. I'd love to.
Yeah, well, yeah, I love the big smile on your face. That's something that you can't get out of a book. I will, and that is your passion, mate. So keep it up, because once you got that, you can't go wrong, hey?
I appreciate it, mate. Dylan, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to following your journey, and I'll make sure I tag Brothers and Book in the podcast title. So hopefully we can get a little bit more revenue your way and spread the love.
Cheers, mate. You have a great day, hey? It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you for tuning into the Priority Zero podcast. We greatly appreciate your dedicated listenership. If you are interested in being featured as a guest on our show, we welcome you to reach out to us through our official channels on Facebook or Instagram. Alternatively, you can contact us via email at contact@priorityzero.com.au. We value your support in helping us spread these compelling stories to a wider audience. Kindly consider liking and sharing these episodes, as it plays a crucial role in our mission to reach as many people as possible.